kindness is, in fact, the only non-delusional response to everything. So everything else is delusional. Everything else, anger, rage, all those things are delusional. Kindness is the only thing that isn't.
Your experience of God has to be an experience. This just can't be some kind of, I read about it in the text. And I want to know more about that. I want to know more about your own inner certitude and where it comes from.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where it comes from, but then you kind of get, St. Ignatius always had these kinds of, some principles where he'd say the entire world and the church and the Pope and everybody could say, that's wrong. And I know that it's the truth. And he had these certain kind of notions. And I feel kind of much the same way. You know, I have a spiritual director named Sergio, who's a homie, and every morning we email each other, every morning. And he talks about kind of the mystical filter. So every morning we reflect on the scripture for the day. And, you know, he's kind of taught me about this mystical filter where you kind of, it's a lens, you know, so you read something from the Hebrew Bible about, you know, an angry God or vengeful or a God that needs to be calmed down because he's really pissed, you know. And then you just kind of have this mystical filter that says, no, that's not who God is. That's okay. These were people who were trying to do the best they could. They tried to kind of put words to why is this happening? Why are, you know, bad things happening to good people or whatever it might be? And then, but you said, no, use the mystical filter and go through it. And so part of the idea is find the invitation, you know. What's the invitation? What are we being invited to? So I always say that with scripture. You know, it's the invitation is there, but it's our task to find it. Find the invitation, cut out all the stuff that sends us running and fretful and, you know, all these things that you don't have to fully understand, but there's an invitation somewhere in there, always, that's inviting you to joy and to bravery. So follow that and consider everything else a distraction.
Can you share with me an example of when you felt your vision strayed from unshakable goodness and how you returned to it?
Well, I think it happens only all the time. That's part of the problem, is that, you know, you get annoyed, you get incensed, you know, and it's like you're always trying to, again, catch yourself so you don't go there. So you recognize that in 2 minutes you're venting about one thing or another, something that's happened. And so the guy Mark, who's one of the therapists here, you know, he'll always say, yeah, he's just so wounded. And it always brings me back, rather than how dare this guy do this, you know. It's really, no, it's about wound. And if you don't welcome your own wound, you're going to be tempted to despise the wounded. And even about kindness, that, you know, kindness is, in fact, the only non-delusional response to everything. So everything else is delusional. Everything else, anger, rage, all those things are delusional. Kindness is the only thing that isn't.
I'm sure you get this question a lot, probably from different angles, which is, for those of us who do identify as people who come from privileged backgrounds and want to be helpful and are open to the transformation process of interacting with people who do live at the margins, as you describe it, what are the most effective actions we can take? I mean, it's one thing, we could volunteer here at Homeboy, we can send donations here to Homeboy, but what else? What do you recommend?
Well, you know, I think something you had said earlier. I always say, you don't go to the margins to make a difference. You go to the margins to be made different. And people don't like that in a sense, because it's like, I'm going to come here and volunteer. What do I do? I said, well, no. The question is, what's going to happen to you? That's a better question rather than what are you going to do? And that feels passive, but it isn't passive. It allows everybody to inhabit with you their own dignity and their own nobility. It's the opposite of passive. It's active, but it's not active in the way that we always think. What actions will I take? No, don't take actions. So I've had 3 people recently, email me, I'm retiring. I'd love to come down there and volunteer. What will I do? I get it. I mean, people do that, and they think about their own strengths. And I know how to do this and I know how to do that. I go, that'll come or it won't. But it's mainly about allowing yourself to be reached by folks. Just come in here, cast your lot, just, it's not about message. And because it's not about message, it's not about messenger. There's a Kairos is a program in prisons, and they always train their people with this mantra, which is listen, listen, love, love, which is pretty good because it's not about, hey, I think you have a good message that these folks need to hear. No, listen, listen, love, love. It's pretty good. I use it all the time because otherwise you're a wisdom dispensary. No, don't be. Can you just, receive people? So I'm not big on here's what you do, and we all want to build the orphanage and Tecate. But it's more about a stance. It's the stance of affectionate awe. And, can you stand there with that spirit? It's more about, it's not about taking the right stand, but it's about a stance. It's a way of being at the margins that is the only way that will erase it, which is really about equality and equity and justice and, all those ways of being where you're not coming to the rescue and instead it's fully accompanying. It's exquisitely mutual. That's what the hope is.
Discover on-demand videos and docuseries, explore a full schedule of daily life classes, and become part of an incredible community. At Sounds True One, we invite you inward to find your way, your way.